Okay, everyone, I'm going to be managing a lot of things tonight, okay? As you can see, we have a packed house, including a very young guest. So I will be mommying, chairing, moderating tonight's presentation. So welcome to Changing Benefits, Lasting Impact, Medicaid cuts and SNAP cuts, what that means for Arlington. My name is Devanshi Patel, and I am the chair of Advance Arlington. It's so wonderful to see you tonight. It's so wonderful to see our virtual friends as well. We are continuing our learning journey, and I want to say a special thank you to our board members who are here tonight. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our members. Thank you to our program partners. Your generosity of time, resource, and expertise certainly allows us to bring these important issues to you. I also want to give a special shout out to Krista Jones for raising this important issue for tonight's conversation. Now, for more than 70 years, Advance Arlington has been the go-to space for tackling the big issues facing our community. And our guiding principles continue to be very simple. Conversation, not confrontation. Education, not advocacy. Partnership, not partisanship. And we've evolved with Arlington's changing needs, but we've never strayed from our North Star, and that is creating a neutral, trusted space where neighbors can learn, engage, and shape the future together. Last month, we explored housing affordability. We unpacked what it truly means. We unpacked how affordability is defined and created and its impact on the health and vibrancy of our community. Tonight, our community classroom moves into the world of benefits, and specifically the present and unsettled landscape of the Medicaid and SNAP benefits programs. We will center our discussion on what we can expect nationally, in the Commonwealth, and in Arlington. Your questions, your reflections, your comments, of course, they are always welcome. So please do not hesitate to join the conversation tonight. Now, on behalf of the board, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our outstanding panelists who will bring expertise from every corner on this issue. If you have been watching the news, it's in full swing. And so is our first panelist who will be joining us this evening by pre-recorded video. Representative Don Beyer regrets that his plans have changed. As you guys know, there is a vote tonight on the government shutdown. And so he has a date with that vote, and we appreciate his continued service to us, his constituents. We also have State Senator Scott Surville joining us. Thank you, Scott. We know that we are not your normal constituency, but we appreciate you doing the special duty of coming over. Scott serves our neighbors to the west in Fairfax. And so it's really wonderful for him to be joining our conversation this evening. Jessica Crothers is here from the Department of Human Services. She is the Director of Public Benefits. Thank you, Jessica. Cicely Whitfield Johnson is the Chief Operating Officer for Bridges to Independence. Leslie Daigle, CEO of Arlington Free Clinic, and Charlie Mang from Arlington Food Assistance Center. So I do want to take a moment, Daniel, if we can please cue the video from Dawn. I think I can.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, hold on.
Being with you in person. I was really looking forward to participating.
Hold on one second, Daniel. Let me get this part going so you guys we can sync it with this mouth too. You ready? 1, 2, 3. No, not 1, 2, 3.
I was really looking forward to participating in tonight's forum, but I have an important vote to take on the House floor. Thank you for engaging in this important conversation about Medicaid and SNAP. We can't lose sight of the ongoing assault on so many programs that help many, many, many of our fellow Americans. I also want to take a moment just to thank the service providers who've been navigating the chaos and aiding our constituents during this really difficult time. I've had the pleasure of visiting Charlie at AFAC and Leslie at the Free Clinic in the last few weeks, and the work their teams are doing is truly remarkable. The Trump administration's efforts to cut and withhold SNAP benefits, to slash Medicaid, are not just misguided, they're cruel. We should be strengthening these programs, not undermining them. And these programs are lifelines for millions of children, parents, seniors, people with disabilities. Investing in SNAP and Medicaid gives us healthier kids and stronger families and more resilient communities. And these programs also reflect our most fundamental values, that we take care of one another and that no one should suffer because they're struggling to make ends meet. Look, we know SNAP benefits will turn back on soon, might be a bumpy path in the near term. The administration continues to do all it can to inhibit the delivery of services. And while we continue to watch the impacts to the end of the shutdown unfold, we've got to pay attention to what was enacted under the big ugly bill. Look, I voted against this bill. It was terrible. It was harmful policy. But through this bill, Republicans are kicking 7.5 million people off Medicaid. That's only half of the overall 15 million who are losing health care due to their decisions. Another 4 million are going to lose access to the affordable health care options unless we extend the ACA subsidies. 900,000 Americans are going to be impacted from a Trump administration rule that deliberately makes it harder to buy health insurance from the ACA marketplace. In Virginia, hospitals may also lose up to $26 billion from Medicaid cuts. Already 3 hospitals are closing. 2 months ago, the Augusta Medical Group closed these 3 rural health clinics in Virginia, and 6 more Virginia hospitals are at risk of closing their doors in the near future. These hospitals have specifically cited the devastating financial impact of the big ugly bill. And as for SNAP, that bill reduces the funding by $186 billion starting in 2027. These cuts mark the largest reduction in SNAP spending ever. And states then, like Virginia, are going to have to pick up a lot of the costs and the administration burdens. Many states are going to respond by reducing eligibility or decreasing benefits or paperwork burdens. And these changes are projected to reduce access to food for millions of low-income households. Look, I'm still hopeful. I'm elated about last week's elections in Virginia and Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So much of this political vandalism brought on by Trump and his cronies are going to be curtailed if we can take back the House in just 51 weeks and potentially the Senate. I can assure you that cuts to Medicaid and SNAP will be at the top of our agenda to remedy. In the meantime, we're finding allies in our fight in some unlikely places. And I think Republicans are beginning to realize Medicaid and SNAP cuts are devastating their own constituents. We suspect we'll see some backtracking by more Republicans, particularly on the House side, as the midterms approach. So our collective struggle continues. I'm sorry I can't join you tonight. Please invite me again. I truly appreciate the partnership with this entire panel to address these major challenges. Good luck this evening.
I'm going to invite Jill to come up and help me fix that. Let's go into our conversation. So I'm going to start with Jessica. Jessica, we have a lot to dig into this evening, very short time to do it. But before we get started, can you just quickly give us a basic foundational understanding of Medicaid and SNAP, what those programs offer?
Sure. So kind of the 101 is both programs are federally funded and then administered by the states. Each state does it a little bit differently, but in Virginia, it's administered through the localities. So every locality has a benefits program division. SNAP and medical assistance are both safety net programs. So there's income and asset and non-financial criteria that's attached to receiving those benefits. And SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, they get a monthly allotment. Money is deposited on like a debit type card. You can use that at any major retailers, even small mom and pop shops to buy food. And of course, medical assistance provides health insurance. There are different types of coverage for Medicaid, depends on the type you qualify for, but generally access to healthcare.
Thank you. Let me ask Charlie, Cicely, and Leslie, can you help us understand what the recent federal uncertainty, to say it kindly, administrative changes, what they mean for Arlington residents who rely on Medicaid and SNAP? What does that look like for the people, for the individuals that you may be assisting?
Well, excuse me, for, our families at AFAC, it means a tremendous amount of uncertainty in where their funding is going to come from. It means a lot of time trying to navigate what in fact is happening on a day-to-day basis. And it also means that what they rely on, the SNAP benefit, they will now have to rely on AFAC for help. In the last week, we've seen 137 families, additional families come to us. And we served last week, excuse me, 4,374 families, all of whom are Arlington residents. That's really the effect. And we expect that to continue to grow through this month, up to as much as 5,000 families in about 2 weeks from now for Thanksgiving. And then thereafter, we'll have to deal with the effects of the big ugly bill.
So I just want to clarify, not clarify, but just give some extra context to what Charlie was saying. He said almost 5,000 families. So times that by 4 for individuals or whatever else in regards to the family sizes that we are seeing. At Bridges, we have the same thing. Our families are faced with uncertainty. We are an anti-poverty organization that primarily services homeless families here in Arlington, Virginia. Yes, there are homeless families in Arlington, Virginia. And with that, they are just as uncertain. They are just as scared. They do not know where things are coming from. And quite frankly, it makes it harder to move past the homelessness piece of it when you don't necessarily know where your next meal comes from. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a real thing. You need your shelter, you need water, you need the basics to live. And if you don't have those as certainties, it makes you unable to reach your highest potential in other ways.
Thank you. So on the Medicaid side, I would say we don't really know what the impacts are going to be. There's going to be, I think it's going to require all of us to be vigilant in the months to come and really be keeping our eye out for what Virginia's interpretation of the new Medicaid rules will be. Because they're going to have a big impact on who is insured and who isn't insured. In Arlington, there's not exact numbers, but we have I think about 10,000 uninsured folks in Arlington, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know the uninsured numbers, but we have about 10,000 that are receiving that expansion
Yes.
Medicaid coverage.
Yes.
And they are.
That was my next point. So if we have about 10,000 now who are uninsured and we can't cover all of their healthcare and we're going to double that, that's our best estimate is if we lose Medicaid expansion, we're going to have a doubling of the number of uninsured folks in Arlington. And, it's just going to take resources to attack that problem. Go ahead, Leslie.
Jessica, just for clarification's sake, can you share what Medicaid expansion is?
Absolutely. So there are different covered groups in order to receive medical assistance, from children under 19 to older adults, disabled folks, pregnant women. And then I want to say in 2018-ish, it's been a while, we expanded coverage to adults, and we call that expansion, where you'll hear Magi adults, but it covers those individuals that are 19 to 65. So coverage never really existed for them before now. And that is the group of individuals that are going to be subject to work requirements as part of the HR one. And those, I believe, we will start looking at in 2026, 2027. But they will have to be involved in, many of these individuals already work, but for people that are not working, will have to be working 80 hours or meet some reason that they're not in order to continue to get medical assistance.
Thank you. Scott, how is Virginia responding at the state level to these federal pressures? Are there state policy measures that help offset the local impact?
Well, first of all, I'll say we don't know yet. But before I say that, let me clear. I'm the Senate Majority Leader, and I'm south of you guys down in Mount Vernon and Fairfax, not quite west.
No, we go 66 west.
But yeah, But it's good to be back in Arlington. My grandparents lived here from 1937 to 1941 in Buckingham Apartments. Before bought 12 acres with 19 other families to move out to the Fairfax County farmland. And I lived in Arlington from 1996 to 1999, and I served on your HALRB, your Historic Affairs and Landmarks Review Board. So it's good to be back in Arlington County with a bunch of civically active folks.
You.
It's going to be difficult. If our budget is a complete disaster. Do not believe anything Glenn Youngkin says. He's been telling everybody everything's great. It's all sunny outside and we have lots of money to spend. If we conform our tax law to what the feds did, so if we make our tax rules identical to what the federal government just did with the big ugly bill, which we usually do every year, it will cost us $2.3 billion over our biennium. Okay, our budget is $35 billion a year right now. So if we do what Congress told us to do, we lose $2.3 billion to start. It's estimated that the SNAP changes will cost us at least $350 million, or at most $350 million a year, per year. Then we just got news that our K through 12, our secondary education, K through 12 rebenchmarking, which is what we have to do to keep up education spending, will cost us $1 billion for next year, per year. And we found out that Medicaid rebenchmarking, which is when we go back and we look at what we need to spend on Medicaid to keep it the same, is $2.7 billion over the biennium. So add up 2.7 billion, 1 billion, 350 million, 2.3 billion. That's how far we start off in the hole for the budget when we walk into Richmond. And we do have a so-called surplus of about, I think, $2 or $3 billion. But before we can even maintain whatever program we have today, and before we talk about these changes, right? You know, we're already starting off $2 billion a year behind, which means if we don't have serious conversations about tax increases or not conforming to federal tax law, you know, we have to start talking about priorities. Do we fund K through 12? Do we fund these programs? Do we fund other things? And the governor says everything's wonderful and great. So just, first of all, keep the underlying budget conversation, underlying background budget conversation out there. We don't have a lot of money to spend. The amount of money we have to spend is going to be a question of, do we modernize our sales tax? Do we put sales taxes on services? Do we adopt the millionaire income tax? Or do we just try and make do with what we got? So first of all, that's the whole backdrop. So second thing, with regard to SNAP, the way the SNAP rules work is Congress said that if you don't reduce your error rate in your SNAP payments, then you have to pay for it. Your matching number changes. And so if we don't get our SNAP error rate below 15%, it's going to cost us $350 million a year. And so I'll give the governor some credit. He's contracting with some companies and some AI people and some other people to try to figure out if there's ways we can stop erroneously paying too many people to get our error rate down, trying to minimize our burden so it doesn't cost us $350 million a year for SNAP. On the Medicaid side, we haven't figured it out yet because most of the Medicaid stuff, Congress magically said doesn't kick in until after their next election. So we're still trying to figure that out. But if we don't do anything, families, you have to start, they create this new work requirement. The work requirement didn't used to apply unless your children were 18. Now it's going to apply if your kids are 14. And so, yes. So if you don't work 80 hours a month and you have a 14-year-old, your youngest child's 14, you lose your Medicaid. They estimate that's going to probably lose about 150,000 people aren't going to qualify for Medicaid anymore because they don't work. And they cut the hospital's ability to recover money to pay for Medicaid. The hospitals estimate that will cost them $2 billion a year. That's on top of the stuff that costs us, right? And so the hospitals are going to be looking for $2 billion out of us. So they're going to increase costs on everybody else to cover that $2 billion. So we have to figure out that. there's 3 other changes I can't remember right now to Medicaid, big ones that they made. But it mostly applies to the expansion population you just heard about, not the original Medicaid population, which was pregnant women, elderly adults, and children. But for the working adults, they estimate about 150,000 people are going to lose their coverage. And so, in other words, in addition to coming up with all the money I just talked to you about at the very beginning of my conversation, we need to come up with, if we want to keep our benefits where they are, we're looking at, probably another 1 or 2 billion on top of that, while we're trying to fund everything else we'd like to fund with a brand new governor who has lots of ideas of things she wants to do. So, thank you, Congress.
Well, Jessica.
We're working on it. I mean, that's the best I can say. It's just, it's really going to depend on how much money we have to spend. We're still trying to figure that out.
So Jessica, on the county level, how are these challenges showing up in DHS's data and resident, day-to-day experiences?
I think it's a little premature to talk about data because most of these changes are just really starting now, last month, and then SNAP specifically. And Medicaid, of course, is delayed, but we're seeing the impact in terms of messaging, really. There was pretty poor messaging. I mean, it was in the news about the shutdown, but many clients didn't know they were not going to get their benefits. They just don't understand the VINA, and VINA was the emergency assistance that Virginia stood up. And it's an enormous amount of effort, I'm sure, and I'm thankful that they were able to come up with a plan for Virginia residents. But there's a gap in the people that were eligible to get this VINA assistance. So families did miss out on it. Many recipients didn't get that benefit. They don't understand why their neighbor or friend might have gotten it and they didn't get it. So it wasn't a perfect fix for the shutdown. And people today still don't even understand why they're not getting benefits. Of course, the rumor is that tomorrow, 65% of the SNAP benefits will be issued for November households. I have learned to not believe it until I see it, but I do hope that it will be there for Arlingtonians. But it's a lot of last minute change. It puts pressures on our nonprofits. It puts pressures on AFAC. Anytime, you already alluded to it, you take away safety net type services, you're stressing other families' resources. So now they don't have money for food, they take money from rent or bills or transportation, other just household expenses to pay for these needs they thought were covered by Medicaid and SNAP. So it is difficult conversations and a lot of miscommunication and lack of understanding in the community.
What is DHS doing to combat that miscommunication? But I think Scott wants to, yeah.
Two changes. One is that states are now required to implement cost sharing for any families who are earning between 100% and 135% of federal poverty level. So you have to have cost sharing provision. In other words, you have to pay a copay every time you go to the doctor if you make between 100%, 135% of federal poverty level. Federal poverty level is $16,000 a year for a single adult. It's $32,000 a year for a family of 4. So if you're making 32,000 a year, or like 135% of that is like maybe what, 37,000 a year, something like that, 38 a year. And say you got 4 kids, it's $35 a doctor visit. On average, they say it's about $1,600 a year out of pocket. So $1,600 a year to somebody making $3,700, $37,000 a year is a lot of money, or $16,000 a year if you're single is a lot of money, right? So that cost sharing is mandatory. That's also mandatory. And the other thing is they terminated Medicaid CHIP eligibility for certainly lawfully present immigrants, including refugees, asylum, survivors of violence, and humanitarian protection folks. And if I represent in my district in Eastern Fairfax County, 1 out of 4 people I represent was born in another country. And I suspect it's probably a little less here, but probably close, probably like 1 in 5 or something like that. Most of Northern Virginia is 1 in 4, 1 in 5, something like that. So basically anybody who's legally present, but not a citizen, can't get Medicaid anymore. And so they can't get it at all. So anyway, that's some of the other stuff that's kicking in.
Yeah, I believe lawful permanent residents, there are criteria associated with them. As long as they're here 5 years, lawful residents will continue to get it. But yeah, those other or permit children used to be able to get it. We probably will not continue. And then haven't really admitted any new refugees. It's Trump's election. And then the copays used to be nothing to $5, so going to $35 it's going to be a stretch.
Well, so Scott, are there any tools or flexibilities that exist at the state level beyond what you've mentioned in terms of tax increases? At the state level to help communities kind of prepare for or manage these challenges we're expecting?
It's really just, I think it's mostly just about more money and beefing up the safety nets in other areas like, free clinics and things, because it's just, the whole point of Obamacare originally was to get the uninsured population insured so we could spread the risk around people better, because the way things were back pre-2009 was that the only place the system could make up costs for people who didn't have insurance was on companies that had private pay insurance. And like my law firm, right? We have private health insurance. That's the only place hospitals could ever make up their cost because they're restricted on Medicare payments. The feds say, here's what we're paying you, take it or leave it. They're stuck on Medicaid. They're stuck on vets. So that's why you had double-digit premium increases for private health insurance companies, right? And so we're basically going to be either, unless the state comes up with the money, we're going back to that system where all the hospitals have to make it up on private employers if they want to stay in business. And so we're back to big, medical insurance premium increases again, or whatever, cost increases. So, and the only way the state to make up the money is to raise taxes, right? And of course, the whole way the feds are funding all this is to cut, billions of dollars of taxes on billionaires and millionaires, right? So basically, what the whole thing is a wealth shift from millionaires and billionaires to all of us. Or if you're in private employment, it'll come out of your pay because your employer can't give you as big of a raise because they got to cover their health insurance costs. So that's the way the system will make this up. So either we raise taxes on Virginians to help cover this stuff that federal millionaires and billionaires and companies used to pay, or it gets made up by the rest of us through not getting raises by our private employers. That's the way I see it. And that's kind of the policy choice for us. The money has to come from somewhere. So that's my prediction.
You are already serving almost 4,500 families a week. By Thanksgiving, it'll be 5,000.
Yeah. You know what,
What do we do?
5,000 turkeys cost? 10-pound turkeys cost?
You do, because you and I talked about it.
Right.
But they don't, Charlie.
No tariffs.
No, they're local and I hope at least. Yeah, where does the money come from? AFAC does not receive any federal funds. It receives no state funds. We do receive this year about $1.3 million. I'm not sure exactly the number from Arlington County, but it costs this year close to $11 million to operate AFAC. And that comes from the only tax we can do, generous donations from this community. This is an extremely generous community, and and the community feels deeply through their support of AFAC about the families we serve. And I think that's a great credit to this community. But last year, in the last 3 years, we've seen an 85% increase in the number of families coming to us. We've already seen a 7% increase since the beginning of the fiscal year. Last year, our food budget was overspent by $1 million, and I increased it to $3 million this year. Where the money is going to come from, that really is a question for me, and a long-term question, because We're looking at long-term food insecurity in this county, not just emergency. So our families come to us once a week, as long as they need our services. And that's the commitment that AFAC has made. We will serve everyone who comes to our door in need. We'll find out how to do that in a few coming months.
So Cicely, when we think about people who are struggling with housing, housing stability, if they're not able to meet their food security needs, and Bridges is providing assistance in that space, how, I mean, we already heard from Scott, right? There's no money.
You know? Bridges tries very hard, in the same way that, a lot of our other safety net, nonprofits try to assist clients and program participants throughout the community. We work with our partners like AFAC, and other community partners who are in the food space as well. There are churches in Arlington that are regularly giving out, food on a weekly basis. I live on a street where one of them is very popular. There are also just other resources as well. We have been afforded the opportunity to be able to provide program participants that are within our programs, in our housing programs and our shelter programs, with groceries if need be. We have been able to provide them with food resources if need be. And we've had generous donors who have kind of looked out for the community in ways unseen as well. I think we got a early taste of this over the summer, when the county decided that they were not going to do a food program at all the schools throughout Arlington County. And Bridges' headquarters office is in the Green Valley neighborhood. And it was one of the communities that did not get, Drew Elementary School did not get funding for the summer for food. And so we had a sponsor, a lovely sponsor, who said that was not okay, and provided us with some funding. And we did what we called Food Truck Fridays, and brought in a food truck every Friday for the summer to feed about 100 kids. No cost, no nothing, no asking any questions, just wanted to make sure you ate. And so those are just some of the ways that Arlington shows up, right? And like Charlie said, I think that's what we love about this county, and we're grateful for. But there's so much more work to do, and us being here tonight to share these stories and share what this looks like yesterday and forever and to come, really helps us get the story out more.
So, yeah.
One thing we're working on this session, it's kind of counterintuitive about food, but is in Maryland, they required every restaurant that produces, or any person produces more than 1,000 pounds of food waste per month, either divert their waste to an anaerobic digester to make methane, or to donate it to a food bank. And because you can make methane out of food waste, you stick it in a thing and bake it, bubbles, and turns into methane. It's, you can use that instead of fracked methane to heat your house or whatever. What they found in Maryland, though, is when they did that, their food banks ended up becoming overwhelmed with food from restaurants because there wasn't enough anaerobic digesters to take them. So their food banks got completely overwhelmed and got too much food. And so this session, we're looking at, actually people want to do a composting bill to require food waste to be composted instead of scrapped. I'd like to be anaerobically digested, but in any event, if you mandate large food waste creators to do other things with their food besides put it in the landfill, it's interesting. Food banks end up getting overwhelmed. And that's a conversation we're having this session. I put that bill in 3 years ago pursuant to one of Governor Youngkin's recommendations from a task force he had. He vetoed his own idea. So now that we have a different governor, maybe we can pass that.
Definitely. I mean, to just piggyback on what he was saying, I have restaurants and hotels from Maryland particularly the National Landing, that come over and bring over food on a regular basis to our shelter in large amounts. And I'm talking good food. So, like you're saying, there's nowhere else for them to take it. They're like, we'll just travel across the water from the harbor to do it. So, yeah.
We've mentioned the safety net collective. A number of people, I think maybe the audience may not know that we all get together monthly, part of the safety net collective, and have conversations about ways and opportunities that we can partner together because we share so many clients that we're working with. Leslie, what role can healthcare and social services partnerships play in building a stronger safety net for those losing coverage or struggling to navigate eligibility requirements moving forward?
Yeah. I think one of the silver linings from all of this stress is that it will force all of us in the nonprofit sector to be smarter about what we do, to be more collaborative, to share resources and not duplicate services. We already do, I think, a fairly good job of that. I think when you compare to other jurisdictions, perhaps, but I would say there is always room for improvement. We have a community resource navigator at the clinic, for example, that helps our patients get, apply for rent assistance or get connected with supplemental food and transportation and utility payments and all kinds of things. Because we know that those things impact health, right? We know that not having enough food or proper food impacts your health. And those people, those sort of care coordinators exist at all of our organizations, and they mostly know each other. And, that's the benefit of having a small county where people really do work pretty well together. But I think that another thing that we could look at is people moving from one service to the next, how we all have a set of, we have an application, we have criteria, some of us do, for accessing our services. And some of that we have control over and some we don't. We don't receive any federal dollars. We were 92% privately funded. But we do receive in-kind donations of about $2.5 million worth of medications every year. So those partners, for example, have requirements that we can't override. But there are things that we can do. We all have an Arlington residency requirement, right? You're an Arlington resident for Charlie, you're an Arlington resident for me, you're an Arlington resident for Cicely. But every one of those places, you probably have to provide some documentation that you're an Arlington resident. Could we have one card that says, I am an Arlington resident, and that gets renewed every year? So I think there's room, but we're running pretty tight. We're pretty busy. So I think, it's just gonna take everyone working together and pulling together our resources.
And I'd just like to underscore that we do work tremendously together. AFAC has referring agencies, all at DHS, all 8 divisions of DHS refer to us. All of the Arlington Public Schools do, and 30 other nonprofit agencies here in Arlington refer families to us. So we have a very broad safety net to pick up families in need. On the other side, we also bring food to a lot of other locations that are owned by other nonprofits and distribute food out of those locations. So we really do cooperate tremendously throughout the county.
Yeah, and shout out to Arlington Public Schools for providing their hot meals on Wednesdays, in case anybody did not know that. Every Wednesday, Arlington Public Schools is providing meals for Arlington families at the high schools, Washington, Liberty, Wakefield, and Yorktown. I think it's at those three sites. I want to ask one last question myself, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor, which will start with a question from the virtual audience, which I of course will ask. So just want to kind of give you a little framing, and then I'm going to go into the audience because I like to get my steps in every month. What gives you hope about our ability to respond to the challenges that we've been talking about tonight? You guys can go in any order you'd like.
I will say, I will just echo what's been said before. A free clinic shouldn't work. It shouldn't work that you have no paid providers and no federal dollars and no state dollars and no county, very, few public dollars, and you give high quality comprehensive health care to 1,600 people every year. That shouldn't work, but it does. And it does because we live in this tremendously special place where there are a lot of super talented human beings who want to donate their time and who are very generous with their resources of all kinds. And so that continues to give me hope. I have seen people stepping up this year and saying, because it's the year that it is, we're gonna bump up our gift to you this year. And I just had that happen today in a meaningful way. And it changes your whole outlook for the year, for the day, for the week. And we're really grateful for all of that. That gives me hope.
I think there are two things that give me hope. One that we've already talked about all evening is just about the support of the community and how supportive Arlington is. Like, I don't think people understand when you go other places and you talk about how supportive the community is and how much we're connected and how much we talk to each other and all the things. People look at us like we're crazy all the time. But I think the other thing that gives me hope are our program participants and how resilient they are. They hear all of the things that are happening. They come to us with all the questions. But at the same time, they are like, we've seen rock bottom sometimes, and we can figure out how to get up from rock bottom. We just need a little help. And so from that, I think we get support, we get hope, we get strength from those things to keep going and doing the work. It's hard. As some of these things are going to affect us as staff. A lot of our staff don't live in Arlington. A lot of our staff can't necessarily afford the groceries every day. A lot of our staff some of them have been on food stamps, and some of them have kids on Medicaid or on Medicaid themselves. Some of these things are going to affect them, and they still show up every single day for the folks of whom we're serving here in this county. And I think that gives me hope and resilience every day. And I'm about to cry, and I'm not even a crier. Devonshie can tell you I am not a crier. But I think that is what really kind of gives me the strength to keep going.
Well, AFAC has a tremendously competent staff. They've been well trained. They know how to deal with 4,500 families. At the top of COVID, we served 2,600 families. Okay, that's how serious this is. Now, we've also got a very strong fundraising program. I know that we last at AFAC probably another 2 years, serving about 200,000 visits every single year. So that gives me hope. We have a very strong organization, and we're ready to help all in need.
I'd say a couple of things. One is this kind of adversity, I think, forces us to innovate. Sort of what I talked about with the whole food thing, and that's an excellent anecdote with the people bringing the food over from National Harbor, and that corroborates what I've heard happened in Maryland after they adopted that law. So, I guess unfortunately we can't get all that Maryland food all over Virginia, but we can at least get it to Arlington, and we'll take it, well, we'll take it down to Route 1 too, so. The part of Fairfax County I represent is the Route 1 part of Fairfax, which is the lowest income part of Fairfax. It's some of the highest concentrated poverty in all of Northern Virginia, right along the Route 1 corridor. And we have organizations like yours that partners all the charities together to figure out how to serve people. We do the exact same thing in Eastern Fairfax. You all do here. So thanks for what you do. But in any event, this kind of adversity forces that kind of innovation. And I think it'll force investment in other infrastructure, like, you all always had the Arlington Free Clinic here, but in Fairfax, we developed the, what's it called? Like neighborhood, health. They started off on Route 1. Now they have 5 offices all throughout Fairfax. Yeah, neighborhood health. Yeah. Okay. I think it's just called neighborhood health. Yeah.
They are almost completely federally funded. And their presence in Arlington is primarily in taking care of children because they took over Arlington Pediatric Center from the hospital about
Okay.
2 years ago.
They do a lot of work they started on Route 1. Now they've spread it all throughout Fairfax, but in any event, a forced investment in that. But the other thing that gives me hope about all this is the election results that happened on Tuesday, because I think a lot of the reality of what is happening is starting to come home to people. If you look at the exit polls that just came out the other day, the Trump coalition has basically fallen apart. The Hispanic community basically reverted to the way they'd been voting 4 years before. I think the horrific tactics on the immigration stuff is sort of highlighted for people. And while we were sitting here, the Catholic bishops issued a rebuke with the Trump administration on their mass deportation tactics. People are starting to understand what this is going to do to the healthcare system around the country. I think people are going to wake up and be like, wait a minute, like Brexit in England. And they're like, wait a minute, we didn't vote for this. People are going to be like, wait a minute, we didn't vote for this, between the tariffs and everything else. And I'm hopeful that what we saw in Virginia is the beginning of a movement where people will start to understand the importance of government in people's lives. And what we just saw was an overreaction, and you'll start to see people want to defend and fight and protect Obamacare instead of take it apart, hopefully after the next federal election cycle and beyond. So that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe Congress can come back and undo some of this stuff. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the affordable tax credit, the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which was the whole focus of the shutdown fight, which didn't get funded. And we have people in Virginia looking at 400% healthcare premium increases. And they say it's going to throw another 150,000 people off the healthcare rolls if Congress doesn't take action on that in the next 30 days. So it's another thing out there. But in any event, the election results give me hope that maybe this country will come to its senses and start to be more rational about its politics.
Jessica, did you want to say anything?
I think everybody kind of. We are a really small locality. We're lucky in that we're small, but we have a large resources. I've worked in Fairfax and I've worked in Arlington, and it's different working in Arlington. It's smaller. We band together, and the energy. I wouldn't want to do this anywhere else because we do have more supports, and it's a difficult job. It's a difficult position to be in. Saying, no, we're closing your case, Medicaid's ending. It feels good that we have a network of support here that we can turn to that we didn't always have other places. And the election.
Sports is happy to hear that we have a very generous community, because I know on the local level, we have Kim, former chair of Advance Arlington, who recognizes very well where we are with money in this county. I also wanted to raise the issue around healthcare, because when we think about healthcare and the cost of healthcare, that cost is particularly acutely problematic for the safety net sector, as we have very lean budgets and might not be able to then provide service or resource opportunity for the people who in our organizations.
Yeah, I think healthcare costs don't go away when we don't address them. healthcare needs don't go away when they're unmet. They just get worse, they get more expensive, they get more intractable, they affect more people in their lives and their ability to work and get food and put for their housing. I, to me, that's what I worry about, because healthcare isn't something that you have to have today to live, but it really is. It's sort of foundational for your ability to sustain your family and to support, giving your family a better life for that next generation. That when you have poor health, sort of all of that sort of falls apart. And I think the Affordable Care Act and also the increase in premiums and copays and all of those things are going to be a big problem. I heard a statistic this morning that I really wanted to share, which is the Kaiser Health News shared that 100 million Americans have some form of medical debt over $5,000. So this isn't, the costs go somewhere. Who is paying that? By not choosing to have a fix for it, you are making a choice. That is a choice to pass that cost on somewhere else.
Thank you. Okay, so our first question from our virtual audience. This is from Liz Nora from Path Forward. How is Virginia planning to balance the new work requirements with the reality that many adults experiencing homelessness have health, mental health, and functional limitations that make employment unrealistic? What safeguards will protect them from falling through the cracks?
So regarding work requirements, generally speaking, we haven't seen really what Medicaid work requirements are going to look like, but if they mirror what SNAP's work requirements are, there are exemptions for chronic homelessness. So chronically homeless, which I believe the definition is 6 months or more, don't have to be working in order to receive SNAP, and that's the new requirements. And then individuals with certain medically verified needs, or those that need to be in the home caring for somebody with a medical need, might need an exemption. Problem is everything I say is an exemption often has to be verified, and it's not necessarily easy to do, and creates another hurdle and barrier to getting or keeping your benefits. But there are exceptions to work requirements, depending on household composition, medical needs, things like that.
Yeah, you're also, I think, allowed to volunteer. Like you can have some kind of volunteer 80 hours a month or something like that, but.
Volunteer, I believe, the work requirement is 20 hours a week or the equivalent of 80 hours a month, or volunteer training programs. So there are ways around it, but it is hard to confirm, balance, and case manage.
And I'm not particularly confident in Stephen Miller's sense of compassion for people making it easy. So we'll see what the rules are when they come out.
Virginia Family Services, and she has a question.
Hi, everyone. My question is, I've heard a lot of conversation about the cumbersome requirements and verification and burden of proof acting or will be a barrier to folks to apply for SNAP, and especially the immigrant community. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about that or how the community is addressing that.
Yeah, verifications are sometimes often a hurdle, but there are certain verifications that are non-negotiable. Everybody has to have some kind of proof of identity, but we can get pretty flexible with proof of identity. You have to prove your citizenship status or your legal immigrant status. That's not flexible. We have new verification requirements that started last week in terms of verifying your shelter costs, utility costs, which we haven't had to verify in almost 20 years. And that's another burden, and that won't impact necessarily eligibility, but it has a huge impact on allotment if you can't verify your expenses. And especially immigrant households, there are sometimes several families living in one house. They might not have a lease in their name. They might be afraid to provide certain paperwork. So that could have an impact ultimately on allotment. But yeah, you certainly do have to verify who you are, where you live, what your income is in order to get public assistance benefits.
So what Jessica's not gonna say
Yep.
is that, all of that verification has to happen by somebody. And that has to happen by somebody who most likely works in Jessica's camp. And as somebody who sits on the Social Services Advisory Board, Arlington County, there are not enough case managers. We do not have enough funding to deal with what that looks like. And so just adding an extra layer to the already huge onion that we've peeled back today, it's just another piece that we have to be, taking into consideration and think about as well.
The work rules also apply to SNAP. So, we're facing very much the same problems. And the administration wants to put in a lot of administrative rules that make it very difficult for our families to apply and stay active. Some of the work rules require individuals who cannot find work for more than 3 months will lose their SNAP benefit. These are all of the little ways that, SNAP is cut, either directly or indirectly.
Talked about some of the work requirement, but just to expand on what's changing for SNAP is historically the work requirement was for individuals between the ages of 18 to 50. It recently increased to 54. But this month it's increased to 64. And somebody said it earlier, but families for the most part used to not be subject to the work requirement because they had a dependent under 18 in the home, but now it's under 14. So that's going to be another huge impact on family cases because they've never been subject to the work requirement. And the administrative nightmare of trying to see, have you worked 20 hours? Did you meet it this month? Then you fall off and then maybe you're eligible again this month. So it is a lot of casework that has never existed before as well. And explaining that is not going to be easy to do to families just trying to make ends meet.
Time. And we probably could go on for another 6 to 8 weeks, right? Okay. I want to give a big round of applause to our panelists who really did a phenomenal job talking about a very complex issue. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your insight, your expertise. Thank you for helping us better understand the current landscape and what could potentially happen, what we need to prepare for. I feel very comfortable knowing that you all have, the knowledge, the resources, and more importantly, the heart to be able to provide this information to our community. So thank you very, very, very much. I want to thank all of you for being here. You have lots of places you could be on a Wednesday night, but you chose to be here with us, and we will always be grateful for that. And everybody who is here virtually, hey, listen, Advance Arlington's taking next month off. So have a wonderful December. We're going to see you back in January, and have a very wonderful night. Drive safely. Thank you all.